My 8 tips are all around the theme of you need to get your head in the right space to become successful, to become the person that you most want to be. Now the first tip, which has certainly helped me, is that you need to become the person that you think about the most. As Buddha said it, the mind is everything. You think of what you become. So if you think of becoming a successful business person, most of the time, chances are that will happen. Now the way I run an analogy to it is very simply, it's like a rugby player who's about to kick a ball over a goal. Now he doesn't say to himself the ball is going to go off to the left or off to the right. He says to himself the ball is going to go through the middle of the posts. He gives himself that positive self-talk. Now one of the best people who talks about getting your head in the right space is a guy called Earl Nightingale. And if you want to Google him or YouTube him, he was around in the 1950s, 60s and 70s, and he did a talk on the strangest secret. And it's all about the science, about getting your head in the right space and how that helps you to become successful. And so for me, the first key is really about changing your state of mindfulness, because a lot of people try to get into business for themselves, but they still have a mindfulness of being an employee without sort of clicking over to thinking of how a successful person needs to think about. Right, now my second key is to set written goals. Now, in my house, I have a huge glass door, and on that door, I have my bucket list and I have my goals for the year. Now this year I've only set myself 2 goals. Last year I made the mistake, I set too many goals and I didn't achieve them, but I've only set myself 2 goals this year, and one is to start another business and the other one is to do a very long walk over in Spain. Why setting the goals work? It's a bit like a torpedo. When a torpedo is fired, it's aimed at a target. And sure, on its path towards its target, it will zig and zag, but if it does go off the path, it will turn itself back on the path towards its goal. And so that's the same as with us when we set a goal to keep us focused. Now, a good example of why to be written, it works, and I can say it worked for me. 20 years ago, I remember writing a goal down on a yellow post-it note, and my goal back then was to increase my income. Now, I was earning $33,000 a year working for an insurance company, and I wanted to increase it by $90,000 to $90,000 within 12 months. By the end of the 12 months, my income had gone to $160,000. And I put that down to purely writing that goal down, and I still remember putting it in my wardrobe after I'd written it down, and it just sat there for the 12-month period. And so that was always in front of me every day. Key 3 for me is exercise. Now, I've never been a great exercise person, but exercise is really good, and I do it virtually every day. I say virtually every day because it doesn't happen every day. I do aim for doing a 10-kilometre walk every day, but I probably do it 5 times a week. Now, exercise works because it gets the chemicals buzzing around your body, buzzing around your brain. It gives you time to actually think about things. It gives you your own time. And really, there aren't any excuses. If you're running out of time to do exercise, you just need to get up earlier in the morning. When I started doing my health thing about 3 years ago, I would get up at 5:30 in the morning and I would walk 10 kilometres every day. And that was just certainly worked for me. And if you don't belong to a gym, the simplest thing is to just go out your door and walk. Okay, you need to put some music on, fine, but you just have to do it. And it's all part of being disciplined. And you'll find that being in business, that being self-disciplined is a very important tool. And getting yourself fit certainly helps you get through those stressful times. If you're not fit, you're putting yourself on the back foot from day one. So with me, I started my fitness regime about 3 years ago. I lost a total of 21 kilograms in about 2.5 years, and my fitness level is extremely good now. And like I say, I try and walk 10 kilometres every day. Key 4 is to know your values. Being in business, you'll run into all sorts of situations where if you haven't got your values set, you might have to sort of reevaluate where you want to be. But if you know what your values are from day one, it's a lot easier. Now you need to know what's important to you, whether it's the making of money, it's the making of time so you can spend with your family. You just need to work out what are the key things for you. For me, it's time with my family is the most important thing. And I try to live by the golden rule, which is very simply is to treat other people how you'd like to be treated yourself. But you need to have your values very clear to yourself because, to give you some examples, both my children are in business, and there are times when they've come up and they've had to make choices about different situations. And I remember my daughter saying to me once that it was easy to make a choice because I had taught them about values. And so she was able to very quickly make a decision on a situation. So you need to have your values all sorted before you start to go into business. Key 5 is to mix with like-minded people. Now, what I'd suggest is that you form a group of people who want to achieve similar things that you want to achieve. They may be employed at the moment, but they may want to become self-employed. They may have an idea that they want to develop, but to meet as a group because you will all have similar issues and problems. And by meeting a group, you can share those things and you can build on the encouragement of each other's, and you may be able to get answers from the problems that you're having from within that group. Also with mixing with like-minded people is that you should talk to successful people. Successful people don't mind being asked how they made their money. And to give you a good example of this is that my son, who started his business 12 months ago, he rang me a couple of weeks ago and he just got a new client referred to him, and he went round to see him. And he rang me up and said, "Dad, this guy's really wealthy. He has a beautiful house, beautiful part of Wellington, and he's obviously has earned a lot of money." And I said to my son, "Well, ask him how he made his money." So the next time he went round to see him, he sat down and the guy shared with him how he made his wealth. And so to learn from those people, it's extremely important, and people are very, very giving. And mixing with the like-minded people really goes to also to say is to keep away from the naysayers. Most people out there are too scared to do what you're planning on doing, to become self-employed, to take the risk of earning the money. So to keep away from the people who've got the negative ideas and why you shouldn't be doing what you want to be doing. Key 6 for me is probably the most important one, and it's certainly helped me, and that is to read books. Now in my library at home, I've got over 200 personal development, self-help business books. And reading books you can do in your own time. You can do it first thing in the morning, late at night, but you read them to find out how people have made wealth, how they have developed their businesses, because you don't want to go reinventing the wheel and going through the same mistakes that other people have done if you can read about how they were able to achieve success. Now, the most important 2 books that I recommend that everyone going into business should read, one is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now this book was printed 80 years ago. Napoleon Hill was commissioned by the richest man in the world back then, a guy called Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew asked Napoleon to interview the 200 most successful people of the time 80 years ago. So Napoleon took about 20 years to interview these people, and he pulled out 13 key things of these successful people and what they did. And that book has been published and sold about 20 million copies. The other book you should read is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And Robert talks about the how-to of making wealth, how to create a passive income through franchising or real estate is really his key things, or from books. Now, the power of books for me was hit home about 6 years ago. I was in a conference with about 150 people at this conference, and a motivational speaker put up a slide, and on that slide there were 10 books, and he asked of the group of 150 who had read all 10. No one had read all 10. He asked who had read 9. I put my hand up. I'd read 9 out of the books. He then went down through 9, 8, 7, 6, down to 1, and only one other person in that group had read 1 book out of the 10. So I'd read 9, one person had read 1. But the key thing for me, out of that group of 150 people, I was the highest earning person out of that group. So that really set home for me the key of reading books. Now, just to go back to those 2 key books that I mentioned before, Think and Grow Rich and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I actually go to second-hand shops and I buy those books and I give those books away to people who come to see me and they just ask, how I've made my wealth. And so I've actually got a standing order with one of the second-hand shops in town, and they keep them aside for me. Key 7 is act. Nothing happens unless you do something. And you've really got 2 choices. You either do something or you don't do something. When you do something, it's going to be based on a calculated risk. Chances are it'll work. But things don't work all the time. But only if they work, say, 7 out of the 10 times, you're going to be on the winning side. But you just have to do something. Most people are too scared to do something. Even people who are successful, they're still scared to do something, because usually if they start a new business, they're going to be putting up capital at risk. But you need to do something. I speak to a lot of people who initially are very scared to do things, but by telling my story, that they sort of get an encouragement to do things. And a very simple example, a very good friend I've known for 40 years, she's now started to buy residential property. I told her how I've done it, and she's just copying exactly what I've done. But prior to that, she was too scared to actually do something. So people need to act. You need to decide that you'll get out of bed and you'll actually do something that day. Key 8 is to have a positive mental attitude. Going into business, you'll come across a lot of people who will tell you the reasons why your business will fail, why you're not suited, and all the problems that you'll be running into. But to have a positive mental attitude means that you'll be able to find a silver lining in every problem that you come across. Because being in business, that's all you're really doing is solving problems. Every day you'll be solving problems. So you've got to find the positive way to solve problems. You'll have rejection, you'll have financial issues, you'll have product issues, you'll have people issues. And things will seldom go the way that you want or expect them to go. But you need to learn to have a positive mental attitude.